Putin announces partial mobilization, assures Russia's security in nationwide address. Russian President Vladimir Putin announced a partial mobilization in a televised address to the nation on Wednesday, pointing to the threats to the country's existence posed by the West and the inevitable nature of the special military operation in Ukraine. The stretched-out front line, the constant shelling of Russian borderline areas by the Ukrainian military and attacks on liberated regions required the call-up of servicemen from the reserve, Putin explained. Russia will call up reservists who have already served in the army and will arrange for their training. The reservists and Donbass volunteers will be entitled to the same guarantees enjoyed by contract-enlisted servicemen. TASS has put together the highlights of Putin's address broadcast live by Russian TV channels. Partial mobilization. The combat engagement line now stretches over 1,000 kilometers in the special military operation in Ukraine, while terrorist strikes from Western weapons are already being delivered against Russian borderline areas. NATO is conducting reconnaissance actually across the entire south of Russia in real time, using advanced systems, aircraft and ships, satellites and strategic drones. Nuclear blackmail has also begun to be used. This involves not only the West-encouraged bombardments of the Zaporizhzhia NPP, which may trigger a nuclear disaster, but also the pronouncements by representatives of leading NATO countries about the possibility and the admissibility of using weapons of mass destruction against Russia. As proposed by the Russian General Staff and the Defense Ministry, Russia will call a partial mobilization, and these measures will begin already on September 21st. Russia will call up reservists, primarily those who served in the army. Mobilized citizens will undergo required training and enjoy the same guarantees that are given to contract-enlisted personnel. The Russian government and the Defense Ministry will equate Donbass volunteer formations to Russian servicemen in their status. The Russian authorities will also immediately resolve all the issues related to the provision of defense industry enterprises with necessary supplies and financial resources. Special military operation as a required measure. After the current Kiev regime publicly rejected the peaceful solution to the Donbass problem and, what's more, announced its claims on nuclear weapons, it became absolutely clear that a new large-scale offensive on Donbass, as was the case twice in the past, was inevitable. After that, an attack on the Russian Crimea, on Russia would have followed. The peaceful resolution of the conflict in Ukraine that continued from 2014 did not suit the West, and that is why the compromises reached at the Istanbul talks were rejected and the accords were disrupted, actually under a direct instruction from Western countries. The Donbass republics and the liberated Ukrainian regions turned to Russia with a request to support the referendums, and Moscow will do its utmost to ensure security and safety for residents of those territories to make their choice. We will support the decision on their future that a majority of the residents of the Donetsk and Lugansk People's Republics, the Zaporizhzhia and Kherson regions will make. The Lugansk People's Republic has already been practically fully liberated from neo-Nazis. The battles in the Donetsk People's Republic are continuing, and there the Kiev occupational regime has created a deeply layered line of long-term fortifications over 8 years. West's threats are inadmissible. There have been statements in Western countries about the need of the disintegration of the Russian Federation, as was the case with the USSR in 1991, into an array of fatally warring regions and areas. Russia has always stopped those who sought world supremacy and will do this again now. Russia will also take urgent steps to preserve its independence. Those who are attempting to blackmail us with nuclear weapons must be aware that the prevailing winds may also turn towards their side. Russian citizens must be confident the territorial integrity of our motherland, our independence and freedom will be ensured. Let me stress it again, this will be ensured by all of our available means. Putin's decree on mobilization, who's eligible for military deferment or discharges. Russians working at enterprises of the defense industry will be eligible for deferment from mobilization, according to Russian President Vladimir Putin's decree published on Wednesday. Citizens of the Russian Federation working in enterprises belonging to the defense industrial sector shall be granted the right to military service deferment from mobilization for the period of their employment at these organizations. The categories of Russian citizens eligible for deferment and the procedure for getting such deferments are determined by the Russian government, the document says. The decree lists the grounds under which military personnel serving under contracts and mobilization can be discharged from duty. Thus, they can be discharged due to their age, upon reaching the age limit for active military service, or for health conditions, provided the Military Medical Commission determines that they are unfit for this, except for those who would want to continue working in certain positions and are able to hold them, and if their sentence of imprisonment enters into force. In general, with the exception of these cases, military service contracts signed by service members will be still in effect until the period of partial mobilization ends. Russian Defense Minister Sergei Shoigu announced that 300,000 people will be called up for service during the partial mobilization announced in the country. 300,000 reserve troops will be called up, Shoigu said during a Rossiya 24 TV broadcast on Wednesday. According to him, this will happen more than once. This work will be carried out routinely. There is no need for a wide harvester, he stated. This information was gathered mainly from Russian sources, with the intention of presenting the official statements and positions of the Russian side and not to interpret them. Disclaimer: the Mars Ultor team assumes the role of observing geopolitics and history, and above all, does not support war of any kind. We remain neutral. This was our third episode. Thank you for listening, and we invite you to subscribe to our channel to listen to the topics we will cover in the future.